Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. Wait a minute, what? It's your first time? It's your first time? Welcome. Well, come on in. Did you subscribe, though? See, we have one entrance fee into this podcast. We would really appreciate it. You don't have to. But you know what? It'd be really cool if you did subscribe, right? Just hit that follow button, that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, Syracuse Orange Sports, on syracuse.com, Spotify, Apple, whatever the case may be, because you're going to try for the first time and you're going to say, I'm going to want more. It's like when you go to Costco and they give you the sample and you're like, yes, I would like to buy that. So thank you for sampling Syracuse Sports. If this is your first time, subscribe and you'll get a notice every time we got a new show ready to go, and easy peasy, just like that. So welcome. If it is your first time, welcome back to those of you that have been along for the ride here. And speaking of going on a ride, holy cow. I mean, look, the world is full of hot takes. Sports talk can get crazy. I spent many years in sports talk radio. I have many opinions in the world of sports. That's why I do what I do on this podcast and on columns. But man, the discourse we have seen in the WNBA in the past few days has been just over the moon. And it's been ridiculous, and it's been enlightening, and it's been everything in between. And a lot of it, of course, surrounds Caitlin Clark and what's going on with the league's got to protect Caitlin Clark and just Pat McAfee saying things I'm not going to repeat on this podcast. And it has just gotten out of control. So I said, you know what? I know somebody that can bring some perspective to this conversation, that can enlighten us on what's going on in this conversation. And that is Isis Young. Isis is a former Syracuse basketball player. She is now an analyst. You'll see her calling games on CBS Sports Network for the WNBA. She's called college basketball, and she mentors broadcasters. Now she has her own business doing that. She's terrific on social media. Big and bright things ahead in the world of broadcasting for Isis Young, and I really enjoy her perspective. I enjoyed her perspective when I got to teach her at Syracuse University and just getting to know her through the years. And I'm like, there's somebody that can tell us what's really going on here. So we're going to talk to Isis about, okay, what's happening here in the WNBA, the convergence of old and new, people that have been around the league for a while, and this just tornado of new attention that's come to the league, mostly due to Caitlin Clark, but for some other reasons as well. What about Dyaisha Fair and her opportunity to stick in the WNBA? Her first opportunity didn't work out with Las Vegas. Can she work her way back into it? We'll also get Isis' thoughts on Syracuse basketball under Coach Jack, where the program is going, talk some NBA finals, and a couple other things with Isis coming up. I think you'll enjoy that conversation. And you know who I always enjoy hearing from? Our Syracuse Sports Insiders. So we got a fun week here on Syracuse Sports. We have a conversation with Isis coming up. We have an NBA Finals preview from a Syracuse perspective. Later this week, you're going to hear from my old colleague at syracuse.com, Mike Curtis, who's now with the Dallas Morning News. You're going to hear from Drew Carter, who is an SU alum, now the play-by-play voice of the Boston Celtics. So that's fun. You know what else is fun? We're bringing it back, guys. Axe, Brent, anything. That's right. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders get to ask me anything they want, and we make a whole podcast out of it. And I'll tell you, the questions have come fast and furious already because I sent a text to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, let them know we're doing an Axe Brent Anything episode this week. So my inbox is already flooded. We could do the show right now, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to become a Syracuse Sports Insider if you're not already. And it's right there on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. But to become a Syracuse Sports Insider, all you have to do, text the word orange to 315-847-3895. You try it free for 2 weeks, and what you get is texts from me, and you can text me directly, your questions, your thoughts, your opinions, anything you want to know that's going on in Syracuse sports land, the things we're hearing about football, basketball, the transfer portal. Yeah, even in the summer, things are going on. Send me a text. You can text me as often as you want, whatever's on your mind, Syracuse sports-wise, and Uncle Brent will look into it for you. So try it free for 2 weeks. It's just $3.99 a month after that, less than $1 a week to get breaking news first, to get my insight first, and to become a part of this podcast, including our Axe Brent Anything episode coming up later this week. Anything you've ever wanted to ask me, doesn't even have to be about Syracuse sports. And those tend to be the best questions, frankly, because they lead to interesting conversations. Send it my way via our Syracuse Sports Insider text line, 315-847-3895. Without further ado, let's make sense of everything that's going on in women's basketball these days with somebody who would know. Isis Young joining us here on Syracuse Sports. Let's take a listen. All right, Isis, I'm glad you're here because everybody is losing their freaking minds that are covering the WNBA right now. It's fascinating in a way, but it is also kind of pushing that any PR is good PR theory that's happening in the league. So let's bring some sense to all of this. I had to bring in somebody that could put it all into perspective here. So with Caitlin Clark, we probably should have seen this coming, right? Like she brings a whole new audience, right? So what you have is this, meeting of people that have been around the league forever, covering it, watching it, the players that have been there, that have established the league. She comes in and brings a whole new audience here. So you have not only a new audience watching, you have a whole new audience commentating on it. And as we have seen in recent days, just on ESPN alone, oh boy, are the takes flying out here. So
wow,
let's take a step back here. And how do we get our way through this? Is it just going to settle in? Is just some growing pains going on here? Like, how do you view this force of nature that Caitlin Clark has brought to the WNBA?
Yeah, it's such a, I think when growth is happening, it's always going to be met with resistance. And I think sometimes we forget that. That's how I keep looking at it. Like when growth is happening, when you're becoming who you're supposed to be, when the league is getting to a level and it's getting the recognition it's supposed to get, there is going to be a level of resistance or the cons that come along with it. And so one of the cons that Caitlin Clark has brought to the league is new fans who don't know what they're talking about. It's so unfortunate because you're happy they're here. Like to some degree, I'm scrolling through WNBA Twitter, which is getting overwhelming. Like I was like, I think I'm going to take a social media break. and in the heat of this, I'm like, how can we just continue to scroll and see some of these egregious takes? But I think, what we're seeing is just fans who don't know the history of the W, who don't know the history of the league and what it's built itself to, don't know the history of the women who were playing in this league before Caitlin Clark. And so now they're shocked and hurt and calling for assault. They're calling for assault. Did you see that? The article said, if this wasn't a sporting event, this would be assault.
Yeah, that was an editorial. The Chicago Tribune wrote an editorial. Just like, well, that would be
every foul in basketball would be an assault.
Exactly.
Like, come on, what are we talking about here?
That's every play in football. You can write an editorial. Every tackle in football is assault. So
it's bringing new people who don't know. And so I think the most important thing for new fans coming to the W, and it's so interesting because I'm starting to get on some different platforms, recently, and I'm trying to find my voice and I'm trying to figure out, well, what do people need that are coming into this space that I have been in for so long that I love? And what they need is honest information and to be welcomed. We welcome you to join the W. We welcome you to watch these games. We welcome you to comment, but be informed first. Do your research first. There are plenty of things that women in the W, men and women, have covered the W for times and times alone. I think the most interesting thing that has been talked about recently, and watching, First Take and all the takes that have been going off too, but that people don't want to admit is the element of race, right? Like there is an honest element of race, right? That Caitlin Clark is white and she has a background in a school that looks like this. You felt it when you were at the Final Four. I was at the Final Four. The South Carolina, Iowa, you could feel it. And so I also feel like in the W now, we're not giving the same respect to the women of color that have built the league. And then so when you have the followers who are uninformed, they're not showing as much respect to the women of color that have built the league and that what they have had to endure. What Caitlin is enduring in terms of the physicalness on the court is nothing new. I'm sorry, but it's nothing new. We have seen Angel Reese take hits. I've seen Cameron Brink take hits. I've seen Kelsey Plum take hits. Everyone is now posting the Candace Parker's rookie year taking hits. The W has always been an aggressive, competitive, grown-ass women league. That is what you expect. That is why those who have been watching for so long have been watching, because we know what it is. So I just feel like I want the new people in the league to feel welcomed, and that, yes, you should follow us. This is great. Support women, support what the league is doing for young girls, but also come informed before you make a comment. Just be informed.
It's interesting because the league is physical. It always has been. But the shot heard around the world here, of course, was Kennedy Carter's bump on Caitlin Clark. Now, I watched that play, and I say, man, if that's hockey, she's getting a 5-minute major. Like, she comes up on her. You could see her kind of wind up. It's not one of those, like, sly, like, I'm just going to bump you kind of things. Like, they felt like I'm coming after you, right?
Yeah.
So how much does that happen night in and night out in the league, sending messages to rookies, to other players, to veterans, just going at, you mentioned Angel Reese. She got a blatant flagrant in a game that was talked about recently as well. She got torn to the ground, which was kind of another like, hey, Rook, welcome to the league kind of moment here. But it just feels like with Caitlin Clark, you can't have a normal conversation about it for a myriad of reasons. You brought up the race component. She's the number one pick. She is one of the ultimate figures in terms of media attention out there. So it feels like, I'm going to frame it that way, Isis. You can't have a normal conversation with anything to do with Caitlin Clark, and that's just going to be the way it's going to be for a while.
Yeah, no. And you know, I think the for a while is what we get to decide, right? So for a while, are we going to let this go on for the rest of the season? Are people just going to settle in and understand that the W is the W, the history and the culture and the integrity has been built, and Caitlin Clark is just a very good player that is now inserted into the culture. The culture is not changing for you. They're not taking it lightly on the rookie. No one is saying we have to protect the goose egg. The only people that have to protect Caitlin Clark are the referees, because they protect everyone in the league the same, and her teammates and her franchise. Otherwise, if I'm Chicago Sky or LA Sparks or anybody else, Minnesota Lynx, my job is not to protect you. My job is to be Benai Delaney at the New York Liberty and shut you down and make you feel like you don't want to play basketball. You scored 3 points. What are we doing here? So I just feel like I need people to just embrace the competitiveness of the league. That's what it is. It is a competitive league. We complain about the NBA being too soft, but then you complain about the W being too hard. Which one is it? You want real basketball, or you want all of the guys are friends and they only somewhat compete when it's the finals and the playoffs? That's why I don't buy into the NBA all year round. The W, they don't care whether you're best friends or not. You're getting this elbow to the throat when I'm trying to rebound.
I think you brought up one of the best points of all here. One thing that I thought was completely, that people just freaking out and exaggerating beyond that editorial we brought up. It's assault. The refs have to do their jobs here. You know, we have been talking about officials that are not doing their jobs in all sorts of sports, and I feel bad for them because of the scrutiny that's there. We get to watch 100 replays and say, you missed this. They have to make a call on the spot. But it feels like had in that situation it been called a flagrant one, it been handled as it should have been by the official. I still think we're having some of these conversations, don't get me wrong. And what did you think of some reaction out there? Now, this has been coming from some players that have been in the league and people that would know, not just, you know, the Pat McAfees of the world jumping in and saying what's going on here. What did you think of the criticism that maybe her teammates did not step in enough in the moment and go after Kennedy Carter, or have not defended her enough in these spots?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that. And this goes back to when people make a comment, they got to be informed. Brent, 80% of her teammates are 25 years or younger. It's 2 veterans, I think, on the Indiana Fever. Erica Wheeler being the main one. So why that is important is it's not like you're hitting a Benai Delaney and it's Brianna Stewart that's next to her, who you've seen and you know and has a name in the league and will check you and check her teammate. You are hitting Caitlin Clark, and it's the second year returning rookie of the year, and Aaliyah Boston trying to pick her up. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston is going through her second year in the league, and all of her numbers are down. So she's still figuring out what she's doing. It's Nalissa Smith, who's in her third or fourth year in the league. Her numbers are looking a little bit different, but she's been playing strong. It's like these players, the team itself is young. The team itself is the youngest in the league. That's why it's the worst team in the league. It's not because of the talent. It's because they're young. The WNBA is a veteran-led league. If you're a vet in the league, and especially if you're a post player, you run the league. That's how it's always been. So I feel like, yes, we can say, oh, her teammates need to step in or her teammates need to whatever. I have seen Aaliyah Boston tons of times come to Caitlin Clark when she's been frustrated or after she's been hit or whatever, when she had that back and forth exchange with Victoria Vivians just a couple of days ago in a game, and Aaliyah Boston came to her first and rescued her. So I feel like I've seen her teammates do that. What I'm also going to say is the team is young. I wouldn't be a freshman on the team expecting a whole bunch of sophomores to step up for me because they wouldn't know how. You expect the seniors to do that, and the Fever just don't have a lot of seniors. They are missing that veteran leadership. That is what they need, and unfortunately for them, they're just going to have to grow through it in order to become that, which can make them a very good team if they stay together for the next couple of years.
So as the dust settles in this conversation, Isis, I think what people are going to start to realize, and I think maybe they did, because the draft this year got record numbers, and we're seeing record numbers across the board here, which you can attribute to Caitlin Clark. That's fair. But I think what people are starting to see, too, is, hold on a second here. Look at the infusion of talent in this league. Clark, Angel Reese, Boston, Plum, Camila Cardoso at the third pick, who's now starting to get on the court after having to fight through an injury, of course, who spent some time at Syracuse before going on to South Carolina. Dyaisha Fair unfortunately found out how stacked this league is. I mean, you're talking about the third all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball who got cut just because the Las Vegas Aces are trying to defend a title and had to bring in somebody that just could do more than Dyaisha Fair can, right? Like that's just the tough.
Or let's be honest about it. They brought in a retired vet. They brought in Tiffany Hayes, who has won games, who has scored points, who understands what it takes to win. They brought in a veteran because they know that's what wins in the league.
Yeah.
It's not a secret formula. Like this is how the league, this is how you win. You be old and you're experienced.
And Becky Hammond loved Dyaisha. It was brought up on draft night that if she was there on the board, she would take her. She did, but it's just cutthroat in this league. So that leads to, they're expanding. We've heard about Toronto getting a franchise, and there's now that, this is another good thing that will come from this infusion of attention that's there. The NBA is renegotiating their media rights. And something that doesn't get talked about a lot there is the WNBA is involved in that. They will get a bigger infusion of cash from that. They can expand, and you're going to get even more talent in the league. And you've got players, like Dyaisha, who is a scoring machine, who just are on the outside looking in, that will have a place as the league goes along here. So once the dust settles from everything, that's my long-winded way of saying, like, this is a great league with a lot of great players. And once, look, I get the discussions about, Angel Reese even said it the other day. She's embracing, like, I'll be the villain. You want me to be a villain? I'll do that. Right. But it doesn't have to be that way. It could just look around, and everywhere you go, there is talent stacked top to bottom on every roster in this league.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I really give credit to is the college basketball season. The women's college basketball season dominated. It is the reason right now why the W is thriving the way that it is. And I'll say it, and I will say it cleanly. Aside from Caitlin Clark, if you were to take all Caitlin Clark out the equation, you still have a Dawn Staley that has won 3 championships. You still have a Camila Cardoso who is at the top of her game. You still have Cam Brink, Rakia Jackson, Juju Watkins. Like, all these people make up all this commotion that then turns into the next level, right? It's not just the Indiana Fever who are selling out crowds, guys. The Aces did it before the season had even started. They were selling out their home season before the season even started, right? This is a team that's won back-to-back. So I just think that the rookie class that came in deserves a ton of love and attention beside Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, but the others that have gone places and played and done well and have brought their respective fan bases to that town now, to that city, to that franchise. But I also think college basketball had the best season it's ever had. It had the most eyeballs. And then now it's no question why women's basketball as a whole is getting that many eyeballs. And we're going to go through this same amount of growth every single year, I believe, after college basketball season, because we'll see stars that emerge in college basketball in the Final Four that are now declaring for the W. And people be like, oh my gosh, I have to keep following Paige Beckers at UConn. Where's she going next? Oh, she's going to the Mystics. Okay, well, now I'm a DC fan. And we're going to find the same cycle every single year.
So we've seen this growth in the game, an explosion in popularity here, and the timing has been great in Syracuse. And look, as much as, everything happened with what happened with Coach Q, we saw a program improve and get to tournaments and get to a Final Four. And it started there, and Coach Jack has picked up this program and elevated it, right? This is a program that, by all accounts, to inherit what she inherited, which was a tough situation, and all you hear about and all you see about, I mean, look, the chemistry is an overrated phrase in sports, but you've been on teams, you know that it's important. The tone that Coach Jack sets, put basketball aside here, which we'll get into, the tone she sets with how positive she is, how she speaks in public, what they do on social media, all things considered, it starts from the top and it trickles down. So let's transition to a conversation about Syracuse basketball and what you've seen and what Coach Jack is doing with this program. And we saw them take another step forward this past season.
Yeah, I love Coach Jack. It's not just, she's a Syracuse alum or another Black woman or, a former player as well. And it is just because of how she does things, the energy she does them with, the spirit she does them with. And I think she has brought into the program. It's so telling when you're an alum and your school gets a new coaching staff, if they care about the alum, if they care about bridging the gap, if they care about making sure that our alum are connected to our current players. Perfect example, Kyra Wood, very good young lady on Syracuse women's basketball team, is interested in getting into broadcasting. She's studying at Newhouse. She reached out to me because Ryan Kabilis, the athletic trainer, a part of the team that knows that I was an alum and that I'm there and they know that I'm going to be connected us, right? That stems from Coach Jack. Just saying, hey, have a conversation, letting her players know that these resources exist. And so I think what she's doing is special, but it's not surprising. I mean, this is a woman who took Buffalo to the Sweet 16 5 or 6, 7 years ago, right? I mean, she knows how to find players that have talent and that have that skill, like a Dyaisha Fair, and then be able to mold them and put them in really good systems. I think now is as tough as a time ever to be a college head coach with NIL, with the way in which conferences are changing, with the fact that Syracuse could play Louisville on Thursday and then Stanford on Sunday, and then have to travel back home to Syracuse and go to class on Monday is crazy, right? And so it's a tough time to be a head coach, but she's been able to, just continue to keep the spirit of Orange women's basketball alive. I went back and called a game in February, and just the crowd and the interactions, it grew. It's growing. It's getting a little bit bigger. There are more eyes on it than ever. She got recognition, being named ACC Coach of the Year, right? So all these things are trending upwards. And I think that, and I know that she'll continue to get the players who will take the program to the next level because she's a quality person and quality people are attracted to each other. And so I'm excited for what they've built there. And then I think lastly, too, just, a head coach is only as good as their staff. And we don't always talk about the support staff and the assistant coaches, but she has a very good support staff who do a number of things for the women on those teams and do a great job working with the broadcast and making sure that they can represent their teams positively. And so that's the role that I play. And I've had such a good, positive experience with Coach Jack.
I think you hit on something that's interesting to bring up here, Isis. It wasn't that long ago you were playing here, but college sports has changed dramatically in that time with NIL, with the transfer portal, and it's everywhere, right? And Coach Jack has been pretty open about it when she's had the opportunity to talk about it. They need NIL money. They need support. We need crowds, right? You got to play that game now. And it's in women's basketball as much as anything. You brought up the ACC expansion. You made a great example there. You could be at Stanford on a Sunday, you got to fly back home, and you got that Monday morning class coming up here. So how do you see the interaction here of, we know it's a business. They're admitting it's a business. There was that big NCAA settlement, the House versus NCAA case where, past athletes are going to be compensated for NIL money. Maybe you're in line for a little payment. We'll see. We'll see coming up here. But my head spins just covering this stuff. You're from a mixture of having just walked off the court and also covering it from a media perspective, like kind of a broad question here, but just what do you think of college sports as we know it in 2024 here? I hesitate to even call it that. It just feels like almost minor league sports in a way.
Well, it's so interesting because I see both sides of it, right? I see that an 18-year-old, based off of their brand and their athletic ability, can make a living and possibly make a living to support their family. Like, that is an amazing opportunity, but yet such a huge weight. I also see the other side, though, that for so many years, the only people that were reaping the benefits of athletes and their work were administrators and coaches and schools and science buildings and everybody else but the athlete. So as an athlete and as someone that works with athletes to get NIL deals and build their social media and build their brand through my business, I'm for it. I think what I caution athletes right now in this day and age and with everything is that just money can't be everything, right? It still is important to pick a school that you believe you can grow, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, where you can have a good basketball experience, where you are on a team that you enjoy with people that hopefully you'll connect with for life, where you can use professors and have relationships with them that extend beyond when you graduate. So I think that there are still so many other things that you have to focus on, but unfortunately, everybody loves money. Everyone loves money, right? Everyone's going to make a decision, and that's always going to be a huge factor. And so when I'm working with my athletes, I tell them, like, the money will come, but the opportunity for growth and for the experience and to build relationships, the organic way that you need to, still has to be decided without money involved. I think now we're also seeing a number of coaches who have decided that because the system no longer works predominantly in their favor, that they're leaving the game. And I respect it. I respect the coaches that are deciding that they no longer want to coach because of NIL and that the athletes run the world now. Because don't get in the way of an 18-year-old athlete who can provide for his or her family. Because you can't handle it and get your ego out of the door, that you're not the most important thing here these days anymore. It's actually the people that are on the court, the ones that have the stories, the ones that are putting in the work, the ones whose athletic ability is taking them far above and beyond.
Yeah, you nailed it. Woodward and Bernstein were told to follow the money. And I believe it was the great television executive, Rune Arledge, who once said, the answers to all your questions are money. And here it is, front and center in air quotes college sports these days. We could do a whole podcast on that, and it is fascinating to follow here. But I did want to get a couple more thoughts from you before we let you go. Transitioning to the NBA Finals, Dallas and Boston. I am fascinated by, there's always great players and great matchups when you get this far down the road here, but Boston has all the pressure on them because they've done everything but win a title with this group, right?
Right.
And Dallas comes in kind of playing with house money, but they have arguably the best player in the league right now. And if he's not the best player in the league, he's 1A. Like, he's the best player in this series, unquestionably. And to see that backcourt matchup between these two and just everything involved, Boston had what's been described, no matter your like or dislike of analytics, it's like the most efficient offense in the history of the league. But Dallas, ever since Jason Kidd made a defensive change in his lineup a couple months ago, has been lights out defensively.
Yeah.
Like, everywhere you turn, it's just matchup upon matchup here. So when you zoom out here on this NBA Finals, ultimately, who wins and how do you think they win this thing? What's going to pan out?
Yeah. So I'm saying Dallas in 7. I think it's going to take 7. I think it's going to be so back and forth. The reason I'm saying Dallas, though, is because still, for some reason, Kyrie Irving is still the sleeper, right?
Yeah,
like we just introduced this whole topic, right? And everyone does it. We talk about Luka and how fantastic Luka is, Jason Tatum and what he needs to do, along with Jaylen Brown, right? And the pressure that they have. And I think for the Celtics, that's it. That is literally the storyline. Is like, can you live up to the hype? This is pressure. Like, pressure either busts pipes or it makes diamonds. So they could be the team that is supposed to win the championship that they're supposed to win. Or Dallas, who I think will win because they have the best backcourt in the league. I think at times when Luka gets tired and you see him taking bad shots or a couple air balls in a row and the system starts to get a little bit wonky, Kyrie just slides right in. He's like, okay, I'll take over. No problem. I forget which game it was, but it was maybe game 5, but they needed to win, but both of them had dropped 33. And Luka's in the post game and he's like, man, listen, great game. We did good. But let me tell you, Kai held us. Kai held us. And so I just think that in order for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to win and to thrive in the pressure, they have to find a way to limit the backcourt. And I just don't think anybody can limit Luka and Kai when they're on their best. And I just still don't think we've seen like Kyrie at 100% go off. I think we have like let Luka do Luka, and then when Kai needs to step in and fill the gap so they're able to win and get to the next round, they do that. I'm banking that we're going to see like a Kyrie Irving unleash. And I think the Mavs are going to have enough to win.
Yeah, Kyrie's been here and done that. And I saw a stat the other day about he's played as many playoff games with Dallas as he has with, I think, Brooklyn and Boston combined. Or
right.
Let's face it, Kyrie's been on a lot of different teams. I'm losing track here, but I'm like, hey, remember Cleveland? Like, they don't win that series without him. LeBron James was a force of nature, but Kyrie essentially won them that series in Game 7.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch that, that kicks in now.
Yeah.
Now you combine him with Luka, who you said, he's not even 100%. This guy's fighting through a major knee injury right now. And I come back to the pressure thing.
Yeah.
Not that Boston can't handle it. They've been there and done that now. They've got some veterans. They get Porzingis back, which is kind of a bummer for Syracuse fans, Isis, because that means we'll probably see less of O'Shea Brissett, who's been a great off the bench, come in, kind of light up the world type of player for the Celtics. But I'm with you. There's just something about this Dallas team that I feel like, and what you said about Kyrie makes a lot of sense. Like, if you have the advantage at this level, at the NBA Finals, to play with house money and all the pressures on the other side, I'm going to put my money on that team. I feel like they're the team that can just play the game. Whereas if Boston has a bad shooting night, and look, they've been terrific in what are they, 12-2 in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not taking anything away from them. But I don't know. There's just something about the walls coming in on you when things don't go your way, and Dallas is just doing their thing. If you can just play the game, you've played the game. You can describe it better than me. When you can just play the game and not think about anything else, that is such a huge advantage. And I don't know if Boston is going to have that advantage.
Yeah, and like you said, relying on the experience, having been there. Kyrie did that 10 so years ago, right, with LeBron. And so this is somebody who has been through all these trials and tribulations and now is here and has, some of the best pieces with this team to make it happen. So I feel like if there is an advantage to the Mavs, that's what it is that little bit of experience and that leadership that, Luka and Kai bring and that we've kind of talked about. I think the media has done a really good job with the ways in which they talked about how Dallas has brought it together. When it first happened last year, everyone was looking like, oh my gosh, this is never going to work. Like, they look like they're playing two separate sides of basketball. There's one team here, one team on this side. And then all of a sudden now it's like, it's the most seamless game that you're watching when those two are at 100%.
One more thing before we let you go, Isis. I just want to catch up on your career, what you're up to these days. We know you're a broadcaster and an analyst. You're going to be doing some WNBA games for CBS Sports, but you also have your own business where you kind of mentor broadcasters. And boy, that makes me feel old because at one time you were in my class and now you're teaching people. So, and like I said, it wasn't that long ago you were at Syracuse, but you got right into it and you're teaching the future broadcasters of America that want to do what you do. And you're living the dream. I love to see it. So just tell me about life these days and just how things are going for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. My business is Your World Enterprises. It's Your World ENT on social and then yourworldent.com as well. And so, yeah, basically, I started just, broadcast coaching. I had felt like there were a lot of young women and men, but specifically women and women of color that were wanting to get into broadcasting and had athletic backgrounds, whether it was a track and field background, they wanted to become a broadcaster, or basketball or something else. And so, I just kind of really wanted to piece together a program that I could use to teach them what I've learned in my short time. I think my experience at Newhouse was so different because I'm not a play-by-play, right? Like Newhouse is known to produce the best play voices ever. I am an analyst. And so though I learned how to have a delivery and how to have a cadence on air, I had to teach myself or learn from others and mentors and watching the game how to do that as an analyst. And so it's really cool to be able to provide some type of program to teach others. So I'm helping others just become sideline reporters or aspiring basketball analysts. And then I work mainly with high school athletes these days, helping them build their brand, manage their social media, take advantage of some of these opportunities. And so it's more like, a little bit of social media consulting, some media training with like AAU teams and colleges. But it's all centered around what I do, which is being on air, public speaking, building your brand, and allowing someone just to be very articulate and confident in how they deliver whatever message they want to get across the world. And so I've been working with high school athletes mostly in the past year, and then a couple of broadcasters who are up and coming, and it's been exciting. It's a really fulfilling job just to be able to pull as you climb. Like that's the slogan for the business, and that's why it is, because it's as simple as what I do. Like I think as I'm still trying to climb and get to the next job and to the next platform and say the next thing that needs to be said, I just want to make sure that I'm pulling other people along with me, whether they're high school athletes or whether they're young women or men that are out of college that are searching for that next role, and they just need someone to believe in them, give them some time to develop their skills. And so you were one of those people who gave me some time to develop mine. So I want to say thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Love seeing your star rise here.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. All these kids are going to have so many questions about what's going on even today with what we've talked about on the pod, and you're going to guide them the right way here. So keep doing what you're doing. I'd love to catch up down the road, but appreciate you and appreciate you hanging with us today here on Syracuse Sports Isis. We'll catch up down the road.
Thanks so much, Brent.